I'll share the link in the private chat. And we're live.
My internet might be funky. I might need to fix it. It's all right.
All right. Welcome everybody to the community discussion on the future of the Cosmos Hub, where we discuss different aspects of where we see the Cosmos Hub going, and discussions on what the pros and cons are, and on the directions that we should be taking on for the Cosmos Hub itself. And yeah, today we have Chingo from Tendermint, Gavin from Figment Networks, Jay from Tendermint, Tariq, who is doing an awesome job with Unify DAO and hyping up the Cosmos network, Zaki, who's just launched the Stargate 3 network, getting everyone processing through the integration testing for the next upgrade for the Cosmos Hub, and Peng, who is leading the awesome effort as Tendermint as well. So thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here. And today's agenda, I believe, will be around Interchain Staking. I'm hoping this would be a fairly casual conversation. If anyone has any comments and things like that, feel free to step up. If you want to address any comments, I'll be happy to highlight those on the stream, and we can have that as well.
Cool.
Do we want to get started, Jay, with just the basics about what interchain staking is? Wait, did Jay drop off?
I think he did.
I can take it. Mm-hmm. Or at least like what my mental model of interchain staking is. So like, I mean, to kind of go off what we talked about in the previous the call last week, the model that was described was extend the staking module, which is currently really lacks a full-time maintainer, which is a sort of a meta problem for all of this work. And extend the staking module with a bunch of new functionality that would basically allow validators to specify other chains that they would be validating for. And then the slashing module would also be able to understand evidence on those other chains and use those other chains to, and it would probably involve making sure that every one of those chains has a live IBC connection in order for interchain staking to work.
All right, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, so is the idea here that with IBC, we have data, like cross-chain data, we have cross-chain value exchange, but we can also now cross-chain staking.
Yeah, so the idea would be like, so the staking module, we would have like a new IBC application protocol. The staking module, like you as a validator would submit a transaction that talks to the staking module and says, I want to be slashable and I'm going to be validating on this other chain. It would emit an IBC packet that some follower chain or chain that is like participating in interchain staking could understand. And the consequences on the hub of a validator electing to be part of another chain, to opting into the system would be, they would be able to be slashable. If you submit evidence of a fault to the IBC Lite client, not only could it close it may or may not close the channel, but even if the channel isn't closed, you would also send a slashing event on the hub that would slash the validator for their faults.
Yeah.
The question is, do we use?
And I have that's what I mean by interchain staking, and it's like the key thing is the reason why it has to be that way is because when there's a fault, like when, if you just have a blockchain, a tenement blockchain running proof of stake like the Cosmos Hub does, it's not obvious what's going to happen when a third of the validators are acting maliciously. We would hope that through social consensus, we can all agree on the rightful chain according to what we determine to be what is fair. But it's probably not always going to be the case for all such failures that social consensus is sufficient. And sometimes sometimes you need to really have something quantifiable, slashable at stake, which is the principle of our proof of stake system. So the only thing that can really hold a blockchain accountable for its own internal failures of a third Byzantine is another blockchain that is observing it. And the core thesis of interchange staking is that this should be done. This must be done in order for the whole system to have security. So in other words, blockchain maximalism is a terrible idea, would be another way to put it. You want diverse blockchains like we want diverse cities in a loose federation, all checking each other, ready to keep each of us accountable.
But the question is, are we using the same atoms to stake, or do we have to use new atoms to stake on a separate chain? Sorry, atoms on the hub. Can we use the same atoms to stake for different zones that are interchain staked, or is it new, different atoms? So
I believe I'm coming to the conclusion that it should not be atoms. So so in the context of the Cosmos Hub, the atom token, which is meant to be the staking token of the hub, it could be used. Every token could be used to even stake in multiple validators on the same chain, but we don't let you do that because it would diminish the overall security that is available. In other words, it would diminish the total amount of atoms that could be slashed. So someone clever who has influences or stake in all the blockchains could figure out a way to actually make money by figuring out the best way to which ones to make vulnerable at the same time. So to reduce all of that,
they could arbitrage security that way.
Double staking just leads to potentially less. It leads to less security than not doing that. In the same way that a fractional reserve banking system results in potential massive systemic theft, so to speak, right?
So I think the fundamental issue that you raised, Jay, is the fact that you want a system where the blockchains depend on each other to secure each other, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, that there needs to be the Cosmos Hub is not secure in itself, even if other blockchains are connected to it. What you really want is for the Cosmos Hub to also be checked by a peer hub such that tokens will be slashed on that other hub if the Cosmos Hub itself should fail. And this creates.
Yeah, and I want to be fair to Zaki and Tariq's point, where I believe that Zaki is trying to he wishes for a hub that provides for utility, and I'm just kind of curious to get your input on what you think in terms of blockchains kind of interdepending on each other, and what the premises of that is.
Yeah. Sorry, I'll just preface by saying, sorry, I'll let you talk about it.
Okay, so what I was going to say was, so I think there's a couple of challenges that are sort of this idea of using another token. So one is there if there is a value accrual story, it's hard for me to imagine that there is ever going to be a value accrual story to the Atom token for any of this activity if there is not some sort of economic coupling between the security that the hub is providing and the collateral that the hub is providing, and there isn't some sort of economic coupling. And if there's an economic coupling, there's inherently some sort of security coupling between these things. And so I do think that we're just like introducing indirection here that is unnecessary if the goal is to use this as an Atom value creation mechanism. One of the earlier versions of Atom 2021 sort of emphasized this idea of doing interchain staking. And I sort of took it off of the front burner in my mind because I think part of the challenge is it's really unclear how much demand there is for this functionality at this point. Is really the other piece of it.
I think there would be demand for something like this because people want yield, and if it is the case that they could stake atoms or whatever it is in order to get rewards from other zones for essentially free. Yeah, that's what.
Talking about demand from the zones.
From users.
From users, I don't think I wouldn't emphasize on yield myself, and that's I think another completely different topic. I feel like there's too much emphasis on maximizing yield with yielding tokens, and it's just like the wrong way to phrase this conversation, in my opinion. But going back, I think I believe that there will be demand from legitimate institutions that have a lot at stake. Nation states hold bond notes of other countries for this kind of reason. This is a way to create a loose coupling to provide influence into another country. And the more, the tighter this net is, you can make it too tight, too coupled, such that there's too much systemic risk. And I think everyone wants to avoid that. So you kind of make it loose, but with enough coupling that there's inductive influence across each other. And people will want the system that gets this concept first and implements it in protocol will be the first that gains legitimacy from a global economic perspective with trillions of dollars involved. Anything else, I believe, will either, it's totally possible that people don't get this and that we don't do this, but I'm saying what's going to happen then is the same thing that happens in all centralized economies. Eventually, it's all going to fall apart, and people are going to eventually realize that they shouldn't have done that in the first place. Because what happens with, centralization, with, for example, a single Cosmos hub and the Atom, is with like any other central government, it loses efficiency in innovation. The right ideas do not get promoted because it turns into a political problem. What you want instead is for Atom holders through their feet individually, in just the same way that you get to choose validators, which ones you believe in, put their atoms at stake in the right innovation that you believe in, and thereby let innovation grow. And if a new zone has a better idea for how to improve the hub, then the ones who chose that innovation should be rewarded, not simply the one who has the most influence in governance and therefore gets promoted by virtue of a single governance vote, for example, right? So going back to your point about Atom utility, I'd say circumvent that. That's not, but Atom maximalism, I don't think is the answer. I think we would all do better if, number one, we choose the right framework and design that will win eventually anyways, and avoid a lot of pain. And number two, you absolutely get, the idea is to design it so that you can choose the right way to innovate. And if you choose wisely, you will do better than other Atom holders. And this creates skin in the game for everyone, and thereby lets the expressivity of our collective intelligence show and grow into better ecosystems. So rather than Atom maximalism, I would vote for something that is more fluid, that allows each of us to each individually branch off. And I think we have a lot of amazing experiments in our ecosystem, like Ethermint, Cosmowasm, now called Partygate. I think there's a DEX one being created right now, and I want to create one based on a Go-based smart contract language. And each of these are going to have their own thing, and we should all have stake in all of them.
I'm not sure
I have
it's
a question.
I'm not sure what you described as preventable, as in one country having bonds of another in order to have stake in it. Because we have exchanges, we have secondary markets. People are always going to buy tokens, and then that's how they're going to obtain, the treasury bonds, so to speak, of a blockchain, of a staking blockchain.
I'm not sure what point you're. Are you saying that I'm wrong about a point that I made, or that you disagree with one?
Yeah, I'm just not convinced it is preventable for people to get tons of stake in a certain staking token of
Oh yeah. But okay, so people will choose many tokens, like people will diversify. However, that does not it does not disprove my first point, which is a centralized economy will eventually fail. And also number two, if you incentivize and promote and make easier, create rails for the creation of these new experiments, that's actually better. So yes, it's not only inevitable, like you said, we actually want to invest in making it happen faster and better. And that's how we end up at the global maximum, the best possible scenario for all of us, and not get stuck in government politics.
And Gavin, I know you had a question, so if you'd like to bring that up.
Yeah, like a lot of the things that we're talking about here make sense to me. I just looking for if you had to kind of condense it into something clear and concise, what is your idea here today for Atom? What about these ideas would make the Atom valuable?
So concretely, for example, with tardigrade, I think it would be amazing if something like this were to happen, such that tardigrade and new DEX zones and new zones, the way they get created is kind of like this. First, there's someone creates enough of a deposit, kind of like to create an IBC bridge, but this is to create, I suppose, a seed, right? You're trying to create a seed for a new blockchain. Describes who it is, what it's about. People start pitching in their atoms, and once it meets a threshold, boom, you get a new governance, I suppose, a governance chain that's registered in the Cosmos Hub. You get through Sunny's shared security module, validators on the Cosmos Hub that start volunteering to validate this, so it just becomes live immediately. You get created an IBC connection automatically with DEX modules between the Cosmos Hub and this chain, so both the Uniswap module and the order book systems present. And perhaps I think it would be nice to have a Bancor system so that over time it's intended to smoothly become sovereign, so that people can continue to contribute, and the staking token of this new zone continues to inflate in a schedule that makes sense, that eventually ensures autonomy. And if this period is, say, over a year or two, it gives Atom holders plenty of chance to say, go there. If most of the people think this is a better hub, they'll just probably all go there, and the other one will become a dominant hub, and you've got plenty of time to figure it out. Yeah, so make this easy, one click, and imagine the kind of innovation that would happen in our ecosystem.
So the Atom is kind of like a path to bootstrap new chains and to be able to get exposure to the assets they create.
Yeah.
Very cool.
And Pong, would you like to kind of speak to that in regards to Starport? And after that, I think I'd like to kind of hear Saki's thought on what he thinks, or Tariq.
So I'd like to share a diagram that I created. You might have to feature this, otherwise it's too small. Josh. So I've been working on a diagram internally within the company. It's a direction for both Tendermint, a proposal for the direction of Tendermint, and also a proposal for the direction of the Cosmos ecosystem. I think one idea that has been really core to Cosmos development as a whole is the idea of modularity. And what you see here is there's two levels of modularity, right? There's two sets of hexagons. There's a smaller set, the red ones and the blue ones and the gray ones, right? And these represent modules, Cosmos SDK modules. And you'll see the larger set of hexagons represent blockchains. And this is a very simplified version of what an interchain economy will look like going into the future, right? So how it works is that every chain has its own set of validators as a default, right? Sovereign chains is exactly all what Cosmos is about. But there are a set of chains that are very much aligned with the hub, and they can share security, with the hub through one of two ways, right? Replicated security, which is, I think, one of the more simple implementations that Tendermint is looking to figure out how to implement, with the remainder of this year and starting to go into the beginning of next year. And potentially, right, the Ethermint chain being developed by ChainSafe would be interested in adopting replicated security, given that they're very aligned with the hub, and the Ethermint is something that the ecosystem has been very excited about.
And replicated security, which is simpler than Sunny's shared security model, which is identical. It's apt for Ethermint because that means it's easy to scale automatically and just let there be many smart contracts, whether or not we figure out interchange smart contract calls.
So yeah, with Ethermint, right, it contains the EVM module, and it's meant to be a permissionless place where anyone with Solidity smart contracts can immediately start bringing value to the ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah,
I guess
I'd like to kind of hear Zaki's thought, because I think he comes from another perspective where the proposition for value curl in a multi-chain space could look different. And I'm just trying to kind of reconcile the two different thoughts that exist here and trying to get a better understanding of what each of the propositions here.
So I guess there's a couple of things. Is basically, so I'll probably like sort of layer a couple of different ideas on top of each other. So one of the ideas that I've become really convinced of is that the design of proof of stake that sort of dates back to like the 2015, 2016 timeframe, where you have a bonded staking token and then you earn rewards back to is basically like completely inadequate for the world that we've ended up with. Like things that were theoretical, that like widespread exchange staking are now very much a reality. And unfortunately, regulation did not serve as a meaningful barrier to this. And so I think that there's a real question that the atom holders have to really grapple with. Is like, there are parts of this vision that I agree with. There are parts of and it is a very plausible alternative to making decisions in governance to use like crypto economic mechanisms to allow atom holders to both sort of experiment with like trying to sort of hold multiple, like have exposure to multiple visions. It is also plausible to build systems relatively easily over IBC that allow atom holders to exit a vision. I think like one of the questions though that atom holders really have to answer is, in order to sort of be the base layer of security and the base layer of incentive alignment across a wide ecosystem, the atom token does need finer grained product market fit than it currently is able to offer. And it's likely, like, I think it's extremely vulnerable to being displaced.
May I respond to that?
Sure thing. Go ahead, Jake.
Thank you, Zaki. Yeah, and this is a valid concern. The atom needs to have a reason, a source of value, and I'd say it's not obvious, but this model of interchange staking alludes to it. But the gist is, I do believe that the Atom, the Cosmos Hub, the very singular Cosmos Hub, should offer scaling through both replicated security and Sunny's rented security model, so that new blockchains can easily be opted in by validators who are staked on the Cosmos Hub. And also to enable new replicated security focused zones like Ethermint to operate. If the Atom just does this very well, then there's no issue in terms of providing value proposition to the users. So in other words, in short, the Atom should be the token that helps run transactions. And it should be the premier staking token that whereby security is measured on zones, on all the zones that use the Atom to stake. And if we just get this done, if we just focus on this particular thing, then the reason why IBM is such a big company is because it figured out transaction processing. They were the first to figure out fault-tolerant consensus in their mainframes, and they also had a lot of research into Byzantine, fault-tolerant transaction processing with their KIC system. And a few years ago, the CEO of IBM, said publicly that the biggest cash cow and the secret that IBM ever had was just this transaction processing. And if you look at the transactions that are going through Bitcoin, and how much money is being made and how much people would pay, and multiply that by 10,000 transactions or orders, or even an order or two magnitude more, that's what the Atom value token is about. And we can get that while promoting a sovereign chain system.
I need help reconciling this in my head, because how is that going to be? How is that going to happen if we're not using Atoms as the staking token for connected zones?
I think the way it works, here's the best model I have so far. And I won't go into reasons why I think we shouldn't use Atoms, but if there was another token that is not inflationary like the Atom, but rather it could be like a flat inflation like Ether. Let's call them photons, and regardless of where it comes from, whether it be Harkspoon or not, the photons should be the staking token for interchange staking. And as people lock up their photons in order to create new zones, it would create upward pressure on the price of photons. If we also create more stablecoin systems on top, and also use the photon as a basis for DeFi experimentation in all these zones, and it creates more demand for photons. I believe that a lot, but not all, of future blockchains are going to start promoting their own fee token, currency token in this way, the same way that Bitcoin and Ethereum does, and there's going to be a lot of them. And it's our job to do the same and promote it within our ecosystem. And also, I think, so that currency token is what should be interchange staked across zones.
So this photon, for example, would be deflationary, right?
Well, whatever Ethereum is, I'd say it's neither inflationary nor deflationary, but it is a constant increasing.
And would the underlying collateralized asset be the Atom in this case? For that stablecoin?
No, I'm thinking of just a simple inflation. So initially there could be zero. I mean, as soon as we enable issuance, on the Cosmos Hub for new tokens, I think there should be, we can start with zero for photons and say every block, all the validators, the staked Atom holders are going to get some photons. As simple as that. Okay,
so we're saying that a dependency for this is that the hub is a token issuance hub.
Yeah, I always believe that the hub should be token issuance hub. That's what is happening when you IBC connect a zone and start pegging, transferring tokens to the hub. It should be using the same logic flow.
I personally kind of like to get Sunny's take on this as well, because I know that Sunny had his kind of unique take on replicated security / shared security as well. Yeah, what do you think about this? Somewhat of a different type of model here.
I mean, I just think it doesn't bring that much value to your atoms, really. Like, I think it's way too indirect. I think that, like, if you don't do, you know, there are going to be other chains that are going to do a more direct, like, model that actually brings value to their native token, like the way Dots does it. And so it's like, you know,
I was just going to jump in and say that. Yep.
Yeah, we can go do this thing, but it's like, okay, we're just gonna get outcompeted by Polkadot. So
no, I don't think
that's
so.
My view. Well, I'm gonna jump in there, Jay, baby. I'm jumping in front of you, Jay. I love you, man. But we have competition. Like atom hold, it's like atoms. It's like the desire of atom holders is like water. You cannot control it. It will flow where there is parchment and upside. And if we make it harder, it's going to flow elsewhere. And so we should see liquidity as, as part of what we're trying to compete for. And the more that we can attract liquidity, desire to get value for atoms, I think you're going to see atom holders demand easier ways to convert atom into value. And I think, Jay, your idea is rock. I like it, but I just see this competition where, to Sunny's point, other chains are creating this value out of the base token, and they don't give a damn. They're just running for it.
Yeah.
And I find atom holders saying to me, I want that other thing. I want this thing. And right now I say to them, well, you have to wait. So I hear you, but to Sunny's point, man, like competition is not waiting. They will attract the liquidity and they will attract that sort of attention.
Well, okay. So let me respond by saying that this dichotomy is a false dichotomy. There's no waiting involved, really. And even Sunny admitted that implementing your model of security is not that hard. It's actually easy to implement these and get an MVP going, especially. And there's
that's opposite of what I said. I said this is a massive project that's on the scale of IBC.
Huh?
That's the opposite of what I said. I said that this is a massive project that's on the scale of IBC itself.
No, we had a conversation where we agreed that compared to replicated security, your model of rented security is not that much more difficult to implement. Also, we're talking about Ethermint and using replicated security, which again is very simple to implement, especially in MVP. So we can literally demonstrate this. It's really a choice of, do we choose to adopt this narrative as fact or not? Because it is true. There's no waiting involved. There's nothing we're losing. All we're doing is actually creating a better system. In the same way that when AOL was big, it would have been silly to start investing in a competing walled garden. The right thing would have been to invest in the internet, web frameworks, social networks, and so on that are open. Now, the Facebook argument holds, but what's going on is there's money from old capital that are creating Bitcoin, Ethereum, that have their own, and people that have their own, agendas and their own capital that are creating what they think is the right thing, and they're ahead of us. Ethereum was ahead of us, and also a lot of the entities are investing in Polkadot, from the original miners and so on. But I don't think this is the right thing to do, to focus on getting, to following their footsteps. I think we should be creating our own ecosystem and focusing on creating our own vision, which according to, I'm saying it's inevitable. So all we have to do is not lose focus, and eventually we will be dominating. And so, look, I also get that people have disagreements, and I don't expect to be able to convince everyone, and I don't want to. I've one of the conclusions I've come to about this kind of stuff is there's been over history the same kind of pattern repeating over and over again, and this is just another instance of the promotion of centralized governance and so on. And I think what's happening is this has always been done through controls via capitalism from people who, the powers that be, so to speak, who have the capital and the ability to create loans and money out of thin air to do this stuff. So we're constantly surrounded by people who are trying to subvert the vision of decentralization. And I've decided that I'm just going to assume that I won't be able to convince people who try to promote that. But rather, I'm mostly focused on getting people who agree with what I'm trying to do, this vision of many sovereign cities and making, the Cosmos hub, or ascribing to a hub that is basically in the business of building bridges and more cities, right? And so whether or not what the Cosmos hub does, there should be a fork or an exit that allows people who ascribe to what I believe in to continue building what we believe in. And, I bet you will see, after 5-8 years that I was right.
Zaki, if you have a counterpoint to that, I'd love to kind of hear what you think about that as well. Because, what separates Cosmos, or a system where Atom dominates the ecosystem, from the ecosystem that Polkadot envisions, right? And I kind of like to hear your take on it.
I would just want to interject here. This conversation, this agreement, is actually representative of the kind of dynamic that will continue to happen, and we need a resolution as to what should happen when two groups disagree about what should happen on a blockchain. And what I'm proposing is the solution to this. It's an exit system that allows people to have the same token and yet experiment on divergences of views. And I'm saying if you don't have this, then I'm forced to choose an alternative that is not better than what I'm proposing. It's worse for both of us. Thank you.
Zaki, I think you're muted.
You're still muted.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so here's my thinking on this. So I don't view, so in general, I would not I would say my macro bet is still that that sharded systems like Polkadot and Near and Ethereum 2.0, which all are basically to a certain extent variants on the same design, with some engineering trade-offs, but are fundamentally the same idea of doing committee election off of a beacon chain, and then using that are not design directions that I'm interested in. The design directions that I'm interested in are, one, I think that the basic architecture of proof of stake needs significant amounts of modification. This general idea of just delegation, staking pools, and a cash flow back to an account that collects, to a reward collecting account, needs a significant amount of change. The other piece of it that I think needs change is this idea of, so that's one piece of it. The second piece of it that I think that the replicated security model is somewhat interesting to work on, and I think is somewhat interesting to work on. I also think what Lazy Ledger is doing is strictly an improvement over that, because it offers significantly stronger guarantees than simply than a system of sovereign chains that don't make separate data, that don't have a sort of unified version of data availability. So all of those things, as are sort of the composite system. I think the real question that represents is how do atom holders make decisions about these things? Governance is, once you have IBC, only one possible tool for negotiating changes in sort of system design. And it's probably like the most stressful way to do this. I also think that probably atom holders should like reasonably get a choice about whether or not that they want to pursue a design direction on the hub before like an exit is really considered. And it shouldn't be that like, I think there is a good reason to want to have these choices be made before exits in order to retain Atom's value proposition. If people choose exit first, instead of sort of offering to governance the opportunity to make changes, the ecosystem fragments very quickly. And there tends to be like, even if you have the same, like atoms that were originally minted on the hub, but they sort of migrate to other chains and they become the native tokens of those chains, they will eventually turn into, in all likelihood, their own tokens and be in competition with each
other. We're already seeing this, right? Every chain that uses the SDK is currently in competition with every other chain. And a large part of that is because IBC just isn't live yet. I think Atom holders have become so fearful that, you know, the token is not going to gain value just because IBC is not here yet. Once IBC is here, it does absolutely change everything, right?
I don't know that it changes everything.
It also requires us to ascribe to the narrative that you know, to agree on the narrative, but I'm saying we have to choose the narrative that I'm trying to promote, not egotistically, but based on first principles, because you know, a lot of the changes that Zaki you want to make on the hub, I don't agree with. And it's not just you, right? It's like anything. So, for example, anything that tries to add PEGI and as well as like WASM at the same time, I think would be disastrous if you put it on the hub because of the implied security as well as the actual opportunity, which I believe will result in necessarily theft at a massive scale. And like these are like principles that I cannot I can't negotiate on, and so I'm forced to exit and not support the Cosmos Hub should the Cosmos Hub make certain decisions. Another is like, you know, Proposition 29. It talks about how to change ownership, and we disagree in principle about what constitutes reasonable announcement to the Atom community. I didn't even know about 29 because I wasn't reading the forums as much as you guys, because there wasn't any agreement, as far as I know, that forums were necessary.
I think we might be getting off topic here, right? We should really focus on interchain staking and not on hub proposals.
Well, what I would say is that I think that governance is probably the right mechanism for making these decisions, and certainly the idea of IBC is at its root the right to exit without leaving the ecosystem, which is a principle that like is realized in the permissionless implementation of IBC that is in Stargate. And so I don't have a problem with that. My general point of view is that like I am both capable of seeing ways of implementing the ideas that I have for Atom holders not on the Cosmos Hub, and I see ways of implementing them on the Cosmos Hub for Atom holders, and it should be up to governance to decide.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want to go back on the lazy ledger point, because Zaki, you mentioned that lazy ledger is objectively an improvement on the basic staking system as it stands.
Well,
So
it's an objective improvement on like rented security.
What is that improvement? I'm not familiar with what you're talking
So
about.
like so the problem with rented security is that nothing about Cosmos or Tendermint would guarantee that a fault on a chain that is renting security on the hub will ever be visible to the hub validator side.
Right. I mean,
that is the sort of root problem. And what Lazy Ledger can offer is the ability to actually make strong guarantees that if there is a fault, those faults are actually visible to the validator.
Zero knowledge?
No, it's
There's data availability.
through these data availability proofs.
Which is based on what? Some kind of cryptography? What cryptography does it rely on?
Error correction, like
right, I remember now. Right. Okay. Yeah, that seemed like more of a blockchain data availability issue, which is fine. I don't see it as an alternative to rented security. And also not to say that rented security is complete. There's still a need for availability proofs, and the Cosmos Hub could be the one that randomly says, "Hey, you zone, and you guys, show us that you actually have the data," and like do a challenge response protocol with all the zones connected. And there's going to be, I firmly believe there's going to be a niche, a strongly needed service across the whole interchange system where people say, you know what? In order to know that this blockchain is actually going to do what it said it would do, you have to look at the amount of photons that are staked. And I believe that there's going to be a single photon that kind of does dominate in this market, this particular market. And this is the market that the Cosmos Hub is the best at, much better than Polkadot or anyone else, because we're the ones who figured out, consensus, BFT consensus, and accountability. So, and I think it's going to be a huge market. And also, imagine if you extend Sunny's model so that you don't even have to be an active validator on the Cosmos Hub in order to participate, in other zones. You've got Sunny's model of voluntary, opt-in through anyone who has atoms bonded at all, thus, increasing the amount of people who can be participating. Sorry, with photons. Lost my track of thought there. But yeah, man. I just, I really love the original, extension. It's been evolving, but this vision of the Atom and Cosmos Hub as being something that provides security and specializes in keeping blockchains and validators accountable, and that this is basically what you need, just a little bit more, and you're offering scaling for many blockchains through permissionless perhaps protocols, or whatever protocols that enable the Atom staked validators to provide transactions for everyone. And even though there will be competition in this field too, just the fact that we've got it first and we're the best selling point for it, I think means we have, as long as we stay true to this product market fit, which I'm saying it will exist, does exist, and will continue to grow, then we're golden. And so I don't want to deviate from that. I want it, and I also see that there is a systemic incentive for people to want to change the hub to add things, and I see that this structural incentive is necessarily for Cosmos Hub maximalism. It's natural, but it will necessarily lead to failure in the same way that centralized governments lead to go to failure. So I feel like I need to commit and have as my root a hub that is so conservative and defined and complete, in its mission, in the same way that Bitcoin is immutable. And I wouldn't want anything else to be the hub. And what do I do, right? Where do I go?
So what I want to
and I like
add here.
Go ahead. Paul.
sorry, Josh, is that Cosmos is in the end meant to be, a cooperative ecosystem, right? There are chains that we compete with that use the SDK, but that doesn't always have to be the case, right? If there were more direct and better ways for atom holders to benefit from the growth of a multi-chain ecosystem, I think they would be more willing to see, Jay's point of view, because currently, as it stands, everyone's just using the hard work, the ICF and Co are paying for and building their own chain, competing with the hub directly. So the narrative that we need to provide for atom holders, whether more features are added to the hub or not, is one where they benefit when a new zone is created. And right now, they're not benefiting when new zones are created. Now, the additional point is, while security for the Cosmos Hub, I think is a great and solid product for the Cosmos Hub to offer. There are a lot of experimental chains and a lot of people with philosophies that are less aligned with security and more aligned with just building something cool. Like, how are we going to convince chains to buy into this hub security? Given that new developer teams don't have a lot of capital to begin with, how are they going to purchase the amount of atoms necessary or photons necessary to keep their chain secure?
There needs to be some balance made between optimizing for maximal security and optimizing for some features, right? I think what was proposed in Atom 2021 is not egregious in having too many, features on the hub, but it kind of spells out basic building blocks to make it so that the hub is, has sufficient amenities such that people do feel like they want to connect to the hub because there's economic activity and usefulness on it. And yeah,
and I think I want to kind of give Zaki a chance to speak here as well. From perspective of someone who's advocating out of 2021 and having more utility on the hub, what do you personally see as potential risks that exist with having a lot of these new features added to the hub, and how do you see how do we basically hedge against the risk that exists on some of the things that Atom 2021 is proposing?
So I think what Atom 2021 is mostly trying to do is actually define a minimal boundary, at which I think the gaps in product market fit can be resolved. Atom 2021 is not a maximalist statement. It is not like let us turn the hub into a smart contract chain. In my mind, there is an Atom 2021 and there is an Atom 2022, but there is not none of these things do lean in the direction of let us simply have whatever smart contracts or run whatever functionality permissionlessly that people want. I still very much believe in the idea that IBC is the right fault isolation mechanism for a lot of experimentation that can happen within the sort of base system of distributed BFT computation. The core idea of Atom 2021 is to actually utilize technology that has been developed in our ecosystem to fill real gaps that have emerged since we started the Cosmos Hub project. And principally those gaps are, for my mind, various ways of packaging inflationary reward cash flows and fee reward cash flows in ways that will drive DeFi in this ecosystem. And then the second piece would be, if atoms can be or atom derivatives are are things that are going to be are widely used in the DeFi ecosystem, this immediately solves the problem of why should a new zone benefit Atom holders, because it becomes a sink for those Atom derivatives. So that's like the first. That's like sort of the and like we've already done a significant amount of sort of technical due diligence on various ways of building Atom derivatives, and I'm pretty convinced that running Cosmosm on the hub is like the most technically appropriate solution to being able to find product market fit for sort of structured cash flows from staking. So that's one piece of it. Then the other piece of it is the sort of explosion that has happened in the Ethereum ecosystem, especially in the explosion in sort of direct protocol users, sort of needs to be answered within the Cosmos ecosystem. And the hub has a really strong opportunity to play a role in answering that in a way that potentially can bring a lot of value to Atom holders and create new cash flows that can then be structured and create a sort of nice recursive feedback loop of value.
May I add something here? I'm not sure that Atom 2021 is incompatible much with Shape of Cosmos. So in Shape of Cosmos, you know, the idea is that there should be a hub that is minimal, but with the intent to enable everything. So maybe it'd be worthwhile to try to dive in to see what the differences are with regards to the components of Atom 2021.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good topic to cover on some. You know, like, to be honest, I think we all have different opinions on the direction of the hub. Maybe it would be important to kind of find directions where we do share and try to kind of push those directions very quickly to move those forward.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's that there's this fear narrative, and maybe this is what the Bitcoiners were all talking about when they were saying FUD, F-U-D, fear, uncertainty, doubt. But when it's clear that say something is, something can be done in a way that is compatible with the Shape of Cosmos proposal, and it's not hard to do, and so on, and it has these benefits, then that's all the narrative we need, because as long as we are communicating what we are doing, and as long as there is enough cohesion in that communication, that is what will get people to believe in the Atom, and all we have to do then is follow through. So I don't think we need to worry about the competition for as long as we can figure out what needs to get done. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
A question for me and potentially for the viewers: is there really that much difference between the idea of staking derivatives and the idea of the photon?
Is there that much?
Given that
So
they're both used to interchain stake, right? And they're both derivatives of the Atom.
I think I would say that they're different because in my view, liquid staking is like when you stake on to a validator, delegate to a validator, and what you have is liquid. So you have to choose a validator. But with photons, you are choosing a validator, but there's no notion of liquidity. So I suppose these are orthogonal things that could be added together, that could be composed, But I don't see them being exclusive of each other. Is it the same token? Well, if there is no photon and there's only atoms, but there's liquid atoms, then I don't think the liquid atoms should be used in lieu of photons, because that's complicating the security, guaranteed security quantification. Right? So I'd say we still want the photon. In fact, the photon appears to me, it really adds to what you were just mentioned about Atom 2021, the first point. You know, like we need a story of value creation, and you know, not only should the photon token be for transaction fees, but it should also be for interchain staking. It adds to that story.
Yeah, and we're actually kind of running out of time at this time. I want to give Zakir some time to perhaps give some counterpoint to that if you have any different opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to go long here. We do these every week. We can talk about this next week.
I'm just kind of curious if next week we could discuss about using the hub as a funding model for new projects that could benefit the hub and the ecosystem. I think Punk brought this up in Unified DAO chat. It seems like we're all fairly aligned on this as well. So I'd love to kind of continue some of the discussions on here. Yeah, so if you guys don't mind, perhaps this is a good wrapping point, unless you all have anything else to say before we end the stream.
I also want to put a pin in talking about token issuance on the hub, because that's something that we kind of glossed over on this call today, but I think that's a really interesting topic that we should be talking about next week.
Good thing. Yeah, and as in, you know, what could the Atom issue more than just the Atom itself in the future?
Or the hub issue, more than just the Atom, yeah.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I brought up these ideas before, and mostly gotten shot down by the Atom holder community. So
when was that? Because the last time it was proposed, that was like proposal number 4. So that was, well, I remember somebody, eMoney proposed it like a year ago when the hub just launched, and at that point, people thought that it was too premature. But
I think sentiment
I would still sit on my point that I believe, on the whole, the Atom token is a bad token for giving retail users exposure to the Cosmos Hub.
Oh God, no! I would say yeah, and that's by design, intentional.
I agree that it is by design, but like I have proposed the idea of actually issuing a token that does it better, that is like a more appropriate token for providing retail users exposure to the Cosmos.
Let's give it Photons. You know,
I don't mind if we call it Photons.
This is that store of value token idea.
Yeah, it's a store of value. It doesn't vote on you know, they don't have a say on.
There's no voting rights, exactly.
Yeah, and it's that stable coin is used for interchange staking, but also for fees. It's probably the native.
I don't know if I agree with this whole use it for interchange staking thing. I do like the idea of giving like a small portion of cash flow to the holders of these tokens. But like there's no staking them, there's no delegation, there's no voting. It's just like, here, I want exposure to the Cosmos Hub and I don't want to do anything else.
Well, then what should one use if they want to stake money like dollars or equivalents in order to show consumers that this zone can be trusted, or that this validator can be trusted?
Just 1 second. I think we can go another extra hour on this. Perhaps we can save it for next week.
Talk about that later.
You know, the token design for, you know, what could the secondary token of the Cosmos Hub look like? What would its utility look like? And how could it be designed in a way that it benefits the Cosmos ecosystem, the Atom holders, and the vision of long-term vision of Cosmos as well. So maybe that could be something that we could discuss next week.
And I wanted to give a big shout to everyone, you know, watching, and everyone in the comment section. There's been really like a side conversation going on. It's been really, you know, great as well. So thanks for watching, and also thanks for everyone for participating on the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your time. Really appreciate your feedback and comments and all that. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.